A few weeks ago, I set myself a challenge to recreate a live action version of Solo Leveling with zero budget. So in this video, I'm going to show you how I went from this to this. But before I reveal the final result, let me explain everything I had to do to get there. Photo editing, 3D, environment creation, simulation, whether it's smoke or clothing, and finally, compositing. Alright, let's not waste any more time. Let's get started. To quickly explain the storyboard of this video, I obviously took inspiration from the manga, but I changed certain aspects for the sake of convenience. I hope you'll understand and forgive me. Basically, the story unfolds like this. We see Sung Jin-Woo on the roof of a building, then he teleports directly into the cave where Beru is. He starts walking toward him and says, well, a talking insect? And then Beru just loses it. He really doesn't like the way he's being spoken to, so he gives Sung Jin-Woo a huge slap. But let's not forget, Sung is a total giga chad. Obviously it doesn't affect him at all. And then, boom, a huge explosion of smoke, debris flying everywhere, and that's basically how the story unfolds. After that, I put on my Sung costume, filmed myself in front of a green screen, and now you must be wondering, why did he tuck his jacket into his underwear? Well, I did that so I could add the cape in CGI later on. Okay. But actually, I didn't really do it right. I completely forgot to add tracking points so that the movement could be followed in the software. Normally, I should have added a point right here, but you'll see that in the end, I still managed to figure it out, so it's okay. Anyway, next I worked on modifying the face in all my scenes using Photoshop. So I recreated a face for every scene where you see me from the front. The problem is, in some scenes I had to talk to match the manga. And as you know, if you've seen my video about Megumi, making a character talk with facial edits is extremely complicated and finicky. In this scene, I managed to pull it off pretty well, but it took me a huge amount of time. And the result wasn't perfect, even though it was quite decent. So this time, after trying that method again, I realized it was going to take me way too much time, especially with several scenes where I had to talk. And on top of that, the result wasn't that great either.
You don't want to be like this. This is disgusting. This is awful in every way.
So I used the method I had found back then. It involves sending an image to an AI that copies the movements from a video and then applies them to the image you provided. Honestly, it works pretty well. The only problem is that it changes the video's resolution as well as its frame rate. Originally, I was at 30 frames per second and it dropped to 29. Now, you might say that's not a big deal, but actually even losing a single frame can make a big difference in the final movement. So make sure the frame rate always stays the same. In my case, I just lowered the frame rate of my raw video to match the one generated by the AI. From there I thought, perfect, everything's sorted. Well, not at all. Even though the movement is more or less similar, it doesn't match the reference image exactly. I fixed that by stabilizing the video on my mouth and using tracking. Then I created a mask, and I think it worked pretty well. Wow! And for those of you who are still here, before we go any further, I wanted to thank you for your interest in my video, but I also wanted to remind you not to forget to like the video for better visibility, and why not leave a comment to let me know what you think. Alright, end of the aside, let's keep going. So to continue, the next step is to create the different hair simulations. I used an image as a reference to create Sung's hairstyle. Nothing too complicated. I created 3 particle systems, one for the bulk, one for the short fade, and the final one for the hair strands. After that, I tracked each of my scenes, set up some lights to match my model, and applied all of that to my character. So we can consider this step complete. Nice. For certain scenes, I had to create a cloth simulation that blows in the wind. Remember at the beginning of the video when I told you I forgot the tracking points? Well, this is where things get complicated. No matter how much I tried to track the scene manually, I couldn't do it. So I used GeoTracker, which is a specialized tool for tracking objects with specific shapes. And with that, I managed to get a pretty usable result. Even though it wasn't perfect because of some unwanted movements, it was still pretty decent. Next, I used Marvelous Designer to simulate the clothes, then exported that to Blender to add textures. After that, all that was left was to combine everything with my character by adding a few masks in certain places, so my arm could go over the cape. And here's what the result looks like. As for the environments, I had 2 to create for this video, one on the rooftop of a building in broad daylight and the second in a cave. For the first one I use Blender. I have to admit, I'm not really used to creating urban environments, I'm more comfortable with natural ones, but you have to know how to step out of your comfort zone. So I used a few models I found on Fab. I started by making the ground, added the edges of the roof, then filled in the rest with the models. I added a bit of dirt to make the render look more organic, then positioned my lighting properly to get a better result. For first test, I have to admit I think it turned out pretty well.
Oh my god! Wow!
For the second environment, I used Unreal Engine. I find that Unreal Engine is better optimized for this kind of scene. I used an environment pack that I modified to fit my needs. Next, all that was left was to place my different cameras and models, then render the scene. In this video, I had the opportunity to use a 3D character for certain scenes, either to achieve a better result or because the scenes I had shot on a green screen didn't satisfy me.
What the fuck is this piece of shit?
So let me introduce you to Roger, the model I used for this video. I hardly changed anything about him because I didn't really plan on using his face. I just added the animations, the hair, and then I created different outfits to match Sung Jin-Woo. As for Beru, one of my subscribers kindly shared with me the model he had rigged and textured for one of his videos. I'll put his Instagram in the description if you want to check it out. The problem is with Beru, I had to create some of the animations myself. And in case you didn't know, I'm really terrible at animation. But for the sake of this video, I forced myself to learn a few things so I could bring you something cool. So I made Beru roar with anger, then get into position to strike Sung. The result was pretty weird, but once I added some camera shake and jitter effects, I have to admit I was actually quite pleased with how it turned out. After that, I sent the renders into Photoshop to tweak the appearance of my models. Next, I imported everything into EBS to composite all my scenes. Then, I combined all the elements we've seen so far. The raw footage, the Photoshop edits, the hair, the environments, and the 3D models. I adjusted the color grading for a punchier look. I added diffusion effects, smoke, as well as some simulations of the groundbreaking. There was still so much more I wanted to tell you, like explanations about the sound effects, editing, creating smoke and destruction effects, but I didn't want the video to last 20 minutes, it would have been too long and boring for you. So before showing you the final results, thank you for watching the video all the way to the end. For those of you who are the most determined and stayed until the end, write the word impact in the comments. I want to see who made it this far. With that, this was my geek, and I'll see you next time.
So let me ask you this. Your permission to kill every beast in here. Exchange.
Your king was not outside. He was not the king. Are there others you call king? Are you the king of the humans?
Talking insect, eh? Now you're acting more like a bot.